of our dear Savior's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. A thrill of hope.
Happy birthday, Jesus, and Merry Christmas to one and all. And for those who recall our earlier lesson on the famous Christmas carol, most often connected with the Dickens tale, when the Christians in merry old England said to one another while greeting one another during the observance of the Advent season and the birth of a babe in a manger, a Savior born in Bethlehem, they were not simply exchanging seasonal pleasantries with strangers, wishing happy holidays. As merry to them, as Christians especially, did not formally mean to be happy and gay or joyful, but rather to be mighty. Have a mighty Christmas is the proper derivation to be true to the original English phrase. So let us all in faith, perceiving through the first pandemic holiday season, be mighty on this Christmas Day. If you manage to finish last-minute holiday shopping at stores and shopping centers that closed a bit early, but still found so many shoppers that you found yourself actually saying "excuse me" many times, like one shop clerk I encountered at Potomac Mills, finding it actually a little bit joyous, even in pandemic, to be able to do that. Maybe you still have the desire and the energy to try to keep Christ in your Christmas, and we're looking for an in-person worship experience to complement your socially distanced experience voting absentee in person at the mall for Christmas by waiting online, extending out the doors of the early closing stores. You may have found, like I did, that the only church is still fighting in the courts to be left alone by the government, or the only churches that permitted you a socially distant opportunity for Christmas Eve service in person. So if you have something against Roman Catholics, you may want to keep it to yourself while you maintain the spirit of peace and joy, trying to celebrate Christmas the way we used to. But attending Mass at a fine Jesuit high school didn't kill me any more than a novel coronavirus has yet. So I found myself having a mighty Christmas out by the family home of George Washington, the militaristic patriot and patriarch of our nation, who took the time during a war against a visible enemy, bringing tyranny, to establish the present chaplains corps, finding them most essential workers. And that Christmas message returned us to some familiar ground in the hills of Judea, where shepherds, or rather wild and less than pious set of outcasts, were watching their sheep by night, as recorded by the Greek physician Luke, another kind of outsider for the Jewish people during those times, because Greeks were kind of foreign. And as he discussed the frustrations these chosen people were experiencing at the time during the homily, deprived of a king from the line of David for about 500 years, and starting to lose their faith, he focused on the miracle and wonders beyond even a virgin birth that found a mighty angel telling some pretty tough shepherds that they need not be afraid, and how they decided to be mighty and follow a star to witness the birth of a baby born not at the Ritz-Carlton of the day, nor even the Red Roof Inn for that matter, but more like a back alley stable, because there was no room for a baby to be born in the busy town of Bethlehem. The other, more important matters to which to attend being recorded by the census, ordered by the government. Perhaps They were reminded by their contemporary, Ralph Northam, that every person recorded in the census meant $2,000 more to the state, and that's going to be good for them. Apparently, even poor folks out in Nazareth had to come to little big town Bethlehem because, despite being non-essential for any other purpose, especially since that is said to be the place where nothing came good from, but being recorded in the census was their duty, like voting, to the state. And so they too gave unto Caesar that which was his. But Joseph and Mary decided also to be mighty for the very first Christmas and gave birth to a Savior on Christmas Day. Most scholars agree that the genealogy of Mary is recorded in the Synoptic Gospel of Luke, while the genealogy of Joseph is recorded in the Synoptic Gospel of Matthew. And we find another, at least poetically minimalist family history elsewhere with the words, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life." That's a little bit more concise than the strings of begats or gave birth to, differing by about 16 names in the line of genealogy for Mary and Joseph. Essentially, this "for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son" Christmas story, as recorded in the Johannine Gospel, which begins with a unique genealogy account for the Son of God, with a familiar ring for those who were versed in the Torah and the Pentateuch, commencing like the book of Genesis, stating, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God." The name of God, which the commandments teach not to use in vain, was so sacred and holy that the early Jews would not even say it. And even today, if you read any Jewish text, you will notice that the vowel or letter O is omitted completely from the word in written form. And even when Moses, another son of a Joseph, with a family history dating all the way back to Jacob, son of Abraham, but living amongst poor folks, is called by an angel to ascend to a mountaintop and addresses a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush, he is told first, very much like in Catholic Church, that there are some spiritual exercises he must perform to prepare himself for the meeting. You just can't roll on up, meet the Lord. And then after his interview, a little FaceTime with the boss and some Q&A, he is told to go back and tell the people the name of the person who sent him. "I am that I am. I am hath sent me unto you. It is what it is." Now wait a minute. Mighty Moses was a descendant of the mighty house of Jacob, whose daddy was the namesake in the phrase, "the God of Abraham the Mighty." Mighty Moses was raised in the mighty house of Pharaoh, had a fine, mighty education. Moses has been kicked out from the palace, but he still comes from a mighty family line. And still, he has to ask the Lord, how do I get the folks to know that I am the mighty man they need to hear? Moses is feeling some insecurity about himself. Maybe his self-confidence was broken after leaving all of his worldly treasures behind. Doesn't have the BMW chariot anymore. Doesn't have the fine penthouse apartment. Lost his condo. They need a little pep talk. A little pep talk. Quick pick me up. Or maybe he recognized that his old ideas of mighty were not quite what the Lord needed right now. A different kind of mighty. And the Jewish people, under the rule of the Romans, are having the same kind of problems trying to figure out this whole mighty thing, having lost their royalty 500 years before. But there are still some interesting things going on during the birth of the Savior in Bethlehem on a mighty Christmas day that are very similar to the problems that even Moses, the lawgiver, the mighty lawgiver, was struggling through at the beginning of his ministry. When Moses was born, Pharaoh was concerned about a population explosion, a phrase we often hear today, especially in China, and particularly amongst the Israelites. And he was trying to kill all of the poor Israelite boys that were being born. Boys generally don't have babies, but this was the plan. And to save his life, if you can remember at least the movie, the first Pharaoh told the midwives to kill the boys being born, but they disobeyed the law. And the Lord blessed them. Wow. They disobeyed the law, and the Lord blessed them. Then, failing that, Pharaoh issued another executive order to drown the baby boys in the river. But Jochebed, Moses' mom, decided to have an early mighty Christmas, deciding to break the law again and hide her baby boy down in the bulrushes. And a series of coincidences after that puts her son in a position to begin to free the Jewish people from the bondage and out from the land of Egypt. And by some miracle, it took a long time after that for Pharaoh to recognize, to realize he had a mighty problem in his house, that he had to be removed. And that only caused more mighty problems because Moses had a mighty that Pharaoh could not understand. And that entire story of an attempt to prevent the spread of the infections of the Israelites is ironically also occurring during the rule of Herod, who was convinced, even though the Jewish people had lost faith that a Messiah was still coming, that he had to do something to keep a mighty thing from taking away his kingdom. And this is kind of odd, because both the Egyptians who built the pyramids and the Romans who built the aqueducts and the roads to build a mighty empire apparently did not possess the science to pinpoint where Herod's biggest threat would appear from. And so he decided that he had to kill all of the boys to prevent the birth of only one. Herod knew how to locate an astrologer to read the stars to find out where he was coming from, but somehow he lacked the common sense, the intelligence to read the Jewish manuscripts about the mighty line of David that is supposed to be the line of the kings of Israel, and use a scalpel to make a surgical strike, send in some special ops, boom, over, rather than opt for the chainsaw massacre like he had entirely lost all of his senses and all of his mind. Or maybe that is the natural reaction, totally emotional and lacking any rationality when you are confronted with something mightier than yourself, bigger than your God, and just have to do anything to try to prevent it from getting you, even if it's silly and beyond all common sense. And somehow the mighty Son of God descended from the mighty line of Mary, even besides an immaculate conception and virgin birth. And like a thief in the night, snuck into the world, undetected, no press, no paparazzi, despite all of the powers that Herod thought that he had to find her. And that's the first mighty Christmas story. And if you are not out being mighty on Christmas Day, and rather just spreading holiday cheer, you may have actually missed the spirit of wishing you a mighty Christmas. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, and descended from a mighty line, but born in a lowly manger. He asked that we aspire to be perfect, like he was perfect, and probably does not grant a pandemic exception to being mighty, like absentee and person voting. Or at least that is how this son of a preacher man understands the word. So may the Lord add a blessing to the reading and hearing of his holy word on this mighty Christmas day. And whether you're hoping to find mommy kissing Santa Claus under the Christmas tree, thinking of a blue Christmas without you, got your chestnuts roasting on an open fire, and just unhappy that a Grinch stole Christmas, my name is Major Mike Webb, and by God, I am running for governor of Virginia. I ask every Christian, every conservative, every Republican, every Virginian, and every American to, like the motto of the infantry, follow me, and we shall overcome. Honest. And y'all come back now. Yeah. This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.